Welcome to all on Women Dialogues, and I'm your host Shashi with you all to create more voice for women and by women. And today's our guest, Magda. She is a peace and human rights activist. She is joining us from Cyprus, who brings with her a perspective formed within the context of having lived in apartheid South Africa, Greece, and now in Cyprus. So, welcome, Magda, on this platform. We are so glad that you are joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me and glad to be able to speak with a sister abroad and share stories.
Yeah, thank you, Magda. And Magda, when we are talking about it, as we heard a little bit about your introduction, you are activist, you are doing a lot of work for peace, for human rights. But before reaching your career journey, we would like to hear about your childhood journey, how you brought up, where you brought up, what kind of situation, what kind of upbringing made you or connected dots with your current work or your future work. So please share with us about your childhood.
Well, I've got Cypriot parents. I'm a child of the Cypriot diaspora in South Africa. I was born and brought up in the apartheid years of South Africa, which is a very dark period. But in retrospect, it was also a great learning period for me.
Right.
I was also it was a very happy childhood and a very nice, loving family, supportive, loving family. I was the third child, so I was allowed to be free. Okay. I was always interested, not injustice always bothered me, even as a young child. It used to bother me that we had to go somewhere and the lady that cleaned our house couldn't sit in the front seat with my mom. She had to sit in the back. It used to bother me when there was violence with the African population. I used to worry about the Palestinians and the Israelis. And this started from a very young age of about 10 or 11. So activism and a sense of injustice bothering me has been something that's part of who I am. It's not something I do. But having been brought up in a family that recognized this, and all they wanted for me was to be happy and they wanted to make me strong. So all they did was support. They were the wind under my wings. We used to have big fights, political fights, massive ones, but there was always space for discussion, for an argument, for being a difference of opinion. So I think I grew up in the right family. I had
Yeah.
very open-minded families that they didn't separate between the boys and the girls.
Mm-hmm.
Tertiary education was not negotiable. We all had the same space in the house. So I think I grew up in a family that encouraged me, nurtured who I was, and allowed me to become the person I am, the best version of myself.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful the way you explain about your childhood, because I think we all need that kind of freedom when we are talking about our self development, and the way when we try to bring out our own best. And when you're talking about as a child who is 11, 12 years old, who is very much fascinated and very much kind of uh, worried in terms of talking about social justice, having a lot of concern, having a lot of understanding. It is definitely inspiring and remarkable being a child when you develop that sense. But same time, I'm happy to see and hear from you that it didn't get suppressed, because what happens usually, even when we get that sense, it sometimes it doesn't get propagated, it doesn't get right place, or doesn't get a place where you can share your ideas, your understanding in forms of discussion, in forms of learning. So I'm happy the way you shared. So when we are talking about
Sorry,
it.
the only thing my parents worried about is me being physically safe, because apartheid South Africa was not a safe place to live.
Right, right.
There was a lot of violence within the community because of the inherent injustice. So all they were concerned about was me being physically safe.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, they let me fly.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Right,
even flew into unsafe places. But, and this is what the fact that I knew I had a loving family
right.
gave me the confidence to actually risk a bit more, because I knew I had someone to catch me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when we are coming back on the point, like when you're talking about you worked internationally and you have traveled and worked a lot of internationally, a lot of different places and countries. How that started? What way you started your work at a lot of different places? As we have got the sense where this activist and justice feeling came from, and the way you are today, but working in internationally, how it developed.
Well, I was always aware of social injustice, but I was also aware of the global community because when I was young and get started in university, I did international relations, which when I was going to university at the age of 17 was really not very popular because the world was still quite big. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always interested in connecting to the United Nations in things beyond my borders. But when
Mm-hmm.
I came to the big shift in my life that brought the best out in me, or what I wanted to be, is when I moved to Cyprus in 2000. Because I lived in South Africa, then married a Greek, and I moved to Greece, and then we moved between the US and Greece. But then I divorced my husband, and I came to Cyprus with my young son, and I immediately got a job at a newspaper. And when you're in a newspaper, you have to familiarize yourself with the landscape immediately. You've got to connect yourself. And with the divided community we live in, there was a conference about a month after I got the job of women in divided communities. What can they do? And I went to that conference, and immediately the shift came. Out of that developed an island-wide women's organization. And the balls, it's like a snowball, because I don't know how much you're aware of Cyprus. Okay, Cyprus is an island. It's about 1.2 million people. In 1974, it used to be a British colony. In 63, there are two major communities: the Greek-speaking, the Turkish-speaking. In 63, there was intercommunal fighting, so that the community slightly separated. And then in 74, there was invasion by Turkey, and now we have a green line. We have a green line and we have checkpoints.
Mm-hmm.
And we are still trying to solve the problem. The north is occupied, and the south, we've got barbed wire. So this is a community, that's where it came, that's why we divided, and that's stepping into, it was easier for me, having not lived through all the trouble here, to get involved in the women's movement.
Mm-hmm.
Because to talk about equality, to see how women could connect across the borders, the boundaries, the barbed wire. And I was very involved, very active. I learned a lot. It was the first time I'd spoken to Turkish Cypriot in my life. I used to take my young son with me to these meetings, not all of them, some of them. So he got to learn about the other, because you know that in divided communities, education on each side demonizes the other community. And
Mm-hmm.
slowly it wasn't enough, or not enough. I was hungry for more. Then I got connected to the Bat Shalom, which is a group what was then a group in Israel, with Palestinian and Israeli women. Then we got strong within Cyprus, and then we decided to form a Cyprus Women's Lobby that would take us to the European level.
Mm-hmm.
So that snowballs, because you start learning, and I'm very curious. I like asking questions. I learn, and I like learning. So every
Mm-hmm.
time would be something, I would connect. I would write a letter. I would remember them, and in that way, then I started. I was part of a community radio media center that was in the buffer zone, and the whole idea of the center was to get the two communities closer together, to do activities together, especially using media. And they launched this community radio station, and I took on a woman's show. And I
Mm-hmm.
started interviewing women once a week as a volunteer. And I started just doing women's issues, but after a few months realizing, firstly, how much time it took. I was doing it as a volunteer. I thought, you know what, peace building is what I'm interested in. So I started focusing on peace, women in the peace building movement globally.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, no, but this was before what's happening today with podcasts and everything. Then it was actually making the call, and I was used to either record online, or I would record online, or I would be in the studio and record. Um, So it was, and through Skype. Zoom hadn't come up yet. Then I was using Skype. And in that way, I connected, and I then was asked to join the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network, which is the mediator peace builders around the Mediterranean. Then I joined the women mediators across the Commonwealth. And about a year ago, I was asked to join the Women's Alliance for Security Leadership. So when you join one network, it connects you to people that when another network forms, they think of you. Because I was in the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network, and I happened to have interviewed a woman who was part of the Commonwealth Network. And in interviewing, after we finished the interview, she said to me, Magda, there's a meeting next month that you have to be at. So she got them to send me an application form to attend the meeting. And that was, so I think that's the, and I'm a natural connector. I speak easily. I connect to people easily. I don't mind asking questions. I don't have airs and graces. And if you don't want to talk to me, that's fine. You don't have to. I don't know. So I think I'm also people used to tease me and call me a human Nokia because I would connect people. That was so I think that's the way it slowly developed. And now it's nice to know that after so many years of being an activist, that you get the recognition. You don't do it for the recognition.
Right.
But it's nice to know that at some stage you are acknowledged as an expert. But it doesn't stop me speaking to normal people in the street. It's not the recognition that's important. It's actually doing the work and getting the right voices out there. Whether it's my voice in some cases or your voice in some cases, but it's actually getting the right voices out. And also, and that's what I'm glad for the podcast that I have, it's also changing the face of internet. Because until now, the faces you would see would be masculine, white, in suits.
Right.
Okay. And they usually were about 50. Now, with the way things have developed, the faces are changing, the genders are changing, the ages are changing, the colors are changing. So I really like the fact that with all of us developing in different ways and different interests, we are helping elevate everyone, or just the person next to us.
Yeah, that's so true. And when we are talking about it, your work, your journalism, women in media and journalism, how you find, did you find in your time being a woman in the journalism in media was challenging? And if it was, what kind of challenges and how you overcome those?
Well, I worked for the newspaper for about 2 years, and then the newspaper folded. Okay. So I went to work in an office because I needed to pay the rent. And everything I've done online or writing has since been either freelance or volunteer. So I think the challenges for me was to actually find enough time because people used to say to me, you know what, I used to think to myself, how am I going to find people to interview? And all it takes is an email, because in the mid, say 2015, 16 or 14, women weren't being approached to speak. So when I would send an email to whoever, I mean, I've interviewed Nobel Peace Laureates or big authors, they're actually quite happy to speak. They were quite happy to speak. So to me, there wasn't a real challenge because I was doing it for myself. The challenge is, because I was doing it for myself and it was community, was to see if we could get it into the mainstream. That's the biggest challenge when you stuff with women, because I mean, if the mainstream media doesn't cover it. Last year I had the honor of last year was the 20th anniversary of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 about women, peace and security. And the Secretary General of the UN invited 4 countries to the table to speak. Cyprus was one of the countries. My organization was chosen to speak, and I spoke. Press didn't cover it. It's the first time a woman has ever spoken about the problems in Cyprus to the Secretary General, or the Secretary General wasn't covered. There was no recognition from the state, except this little email from the foreign minister, one line, but no recognition. Whereas if it was a man, this would have been all over the press. And if it wasn't, peace is also an issue people don't really know what it is because they assume it's something else. So to me, the challenge is how can I get what I'm doing and what a lot of us are doing onto the mainstream?
Mm-hmm. I think when you are sharing, and it's like when we talk about it, peace, when we talk about justice, when we talk about peace building, uh, as your work you are doing, just not for recognition, but you really feel it. But many are really make their career in that. Many are look for their all life, dedicate for their work, like you and many others. And when we see, as you shared, the there was no media coverage, right? Is how does it seem like? Is it like, because I mix many times, I feel, because when we are in media, first challenge is over itself, like it's a male dominated society. If women in media, they are just for glamour, they are just for showing off as a beauty, that's it. If you are talking something different than that, that's not your place. They
That's
don't get
absolutely,
represented, they don't
that's
get
absolutely,
representation.
they don't get the representation. But the thing I also find quite sad, okay, and it's a challenge, but it's improving, is that a lot of the time you will even find women that are journalists that
Mm-hmm.
don't cover these issues.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, the one issue that's getting a lot of coverage and that you can't get enough coverage about
Mm-hmm.
gender-based violence, that's getting coverage, and it's also getting coverage from men, which is good because we need to know that gender-based violence is not a woman's issue, it's a societal issue. But
Right.
when it's specific issues like talking peace building in Cyprus, because until now, the only people talking peace were the men.
Mm.
Women don't cover it that easily. They also don't cover it because the patriarchal
Mm.
discourse
Mm.
has sat on them and they don't realize it sat on them. They haven't realized that, you know what, regardless of what kind of solution I want, my main emphasis, and a lot of the women that are colleagues and co-conspirators or co-activists, the whole point is you've got to get women at the table, regardless of what solution it is. You've got to have a collective peace. And I cannot understand how they can't disconnect it, because I have this label of being for your reunification. When I talk publicly, I don't come out in clearly saying exactly what I want. What I come out saying is inclusive peace, whatever that peace is, a
Mm-hmm.
variety of diverse voices,
Mm-hmm.
diversity of voices at every level, age, education, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, diversity, all that. So all I'm saying when I'm being public, but because I have the label of being a left winger, whatever that means, well, she's pushing for a solution I don't want. So
Mm-hmm.
they forget that feministic thing of, but women have to be at the table. Gender needs to be at the table, whatever you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. But
Right.
fortunately, there's a little bit more sensitivity now, especially concerning gender-based violence. Also, the issue of sexual harassment uh, and femicides, because we had a really serious case last year. So the community, there's a lot more conversation on the ground and in the media. There's not enough in the decision-making people.
Mhm.
So the challenge is to get people to um, take this seriously. It doesn't make me do it less, because like Malala, one person can make a difference. So I don't need to have but it does make me sad. It does make me sad because we're all on the same side.
Right.
But it doesn't stop my passion. It doesn't stop my passion.
Mm-hmm. So, Magda, when we are talking about these all issues, and you are working since so many years, I know you are senior to me, and we all are working from generations about the same issues. Uh, and so-called, we have this world organizations and lot of organization. What do you find? What is the reason we are not able to achieve, or we are not able to get on that level for that we are fighting for years or generations? What's the reason you find that?
I think the reason is possibly because we haven't managed to change the education. Because when you
Mm.
start going to school and you have a book that has a a father fixing the car and a mother in the kitchen,
Hmm.
or they show a family and it's a mother and a father and a boy and a girl and a dog in a little house.
Hmm.
Or when we've got to change the picture the kids are seeing, because a lot of the time, not everyone, to use the word today, not everyone is woke. So some people think they are feminist, or they think they're a liberal, they think that they give one anyone a fair chance, but the discourse has weighed so much on them that they've absorbed it. So they do things without realizing.
Hmm.
A lot of people do that. You and I have probably done it ourselves, because I remember now that I've used words in South Africa that were cute then, but now are so badly racist. So this journey of changing the language, of trying to change the pictures, which is why I'm glad that the internet has come and more people are going online, and there are a lot more podcasts that are audiovisual, and you can use nice photographs. So we're changing the faces online, but we've also got to change the education in some way. And I don't know how we can do that.
Hmm.
That's a big challenge. And I think we all see in the last 2 or 3 years, especially with when Donald Trump was president, how backwards we're going with sexual and reproductive rights,
Hmm.
or
Yes.
gender-based violence, or violence per se. So I don't know. I carry on doing it, but I don't know what we've done wrong. Not what we've done wrong, what we could do differently. Because I
Hmm.
don't think any of us has done anything wrong. I think we all tried, but I think maybe we need to try a different approach. And we certainly mustn't stop trying, because if
Hmm.
you change one person's mind, if you've done one good, you carry on. You
Hmm.
don't need to change the world. You just need to be true to yourself, and at least try and do the best you can so that you can sleep at night.
But when you're talking about that, we have something in education system, and how about where the education system is somewhat influenced by mostly the practices, as you mentioned, that always they show, whether it is advertisement, whether it is any kind of media, and now people becoming more mindful and conscious that what they are showing in media. But if you remember, it was general thing for media to show that women is in kitchen and man is repairing a car, and people used to understand or take in the same way, and they imbibe those things in their culture as well. So does it sound somewhat, do you think those are our patriarchal cultural practice, those are still reflecting in our education system, and that's what it is taking long, or that's what it is taking time to change the education system, because we need to make that understand that that's not the way to represent, whether it is a formal education or whether it is a informal education. Everywhere it pays and it contributes in the child development and psyche, and that make the person to understand whether it is gender based violence, whether these kind of equal human rights, or what way it takes all about.
Um, it's a lot more complicated than just changing the education system. You've also got to educate things like police. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
educate the teachers, because you can change the education, but if the teachers that are teaching it have not been um, retrained,
Yeah.
because you bring with you, I can give you 2 words, and you and I will tell them in 2 different ways, because
Yes.
you bring with you what you brought up, what you've been brought up, and what is around you. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit more complicated than just education. It's also a case of um, women given a space to things like sexual harassment. We all know, and it's not, this is a global thing. It's very difficult to go to the police,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to be blamed, or you're going to be pushed aside, or you're going to be bullied. So we've got to create systems as well that people feel free to report things that are unpleasant. Or you see an ad you don't like, report it to the board that not censors, regulates what's acceptable. So it's, the whole system has to change. But education, you've got to start with education because got to start catching the first generation, the young generation, and then you've also got to try changing the system. It's got to be it's got to be a holistic change. It can't just be at one level. Because I agree with you. I mean, I'm quite liberal and not liberal, I'm quite relaxed and modern. My ex-husband is quite conservative, and my son battles because there's a different approach.
Yes.
And he sometimes gets different messages from both of us inadvertently on the same subject.
Right.
So it's a bit of a labyrinth. But you've got to start at the school because that's the point. And you're not grade one. You've got to start at the play school. You've got to start with the teachers. You've got to try the media. You've got to change the system. Because when I'm working, if I'm a working mom, if there isn't a play school that I can put my son in, how am I going to work hours that I want to work?
Right.
If there isn't a public transport, good public transport, that at the age of 14, when my sons can do the public transport, how he can then travel on his own in the inner city to do his extra lesson or to go to a friend. If it's not there, it comes out of the woman that can take time off work or the child that gets stuck at home. So you've got to change a lot of things, but education is a good starting point. If we can do it, it's the most difficult one because in a lot of countries, the education system is also affected by the church or the religion. So, but we don't stop. But education certainly is a good place to start, but it's not the only place to start. You've got to look at the structures within each setting.
Yeah, there are a lot of, these are the major things I believe as well. But as if we take as an individual of you are working since so many years and you are peace builder. If we would like to ask, or if you would like to ask you to share maybe some of the story where you worked and those got impacted, or if you inspired maybe any individual or organization with your work.
I actually think now that I'm thinking about all of this, I think that's exactly why I have been fighting so hard to get women at the peace table. Because when there's a conflict and you sit down to settle it, the whole idea of a settlement or a peace solution is not to just stop what's happening. It's actually to transform what has happened in the new setup to ensure that what happened does not happen again.
Right.
So the settlement gives you an opportunity to transform. You're not going to get everything, but at least it gives you the opportunity to transform the imbalances, whether they're ethnic or gender or whatever, but it actually gives you the opportunity to take a hard look at what was in the system, see what created the conflict, address it, and transform it into something better. Not perfect, but at least try and change it in a way that it makes the playing field even, that it makes it less likely that conflict will come again. And that's where you put in the gender equalities. That's where you put in the structures that actually support people to not be poor or to make their lives have a life of more dignity. I don't actually, bad things have never happened to me, or maybe I haven't recognized that they've happened to me because I've chosen not to take them on board. But I mean, I have been sexually harassed. At the time I was 14 and I didn't realize what had happened, but I didn't take it on board. When it was only discussed 20 or 30 years later that I actually realized what had happened in that cinema one day was actual sexual harassment. I have been, men have tried to take advantage of me. People have tried to bully me at work. And I've always had a loud mouth, okay? I've always had a voice. I'm lucky. So I've never taken things on board. It's maybe just encouraged me to try harder, to make more of an effort, to it's also the fact that it's happened. Sometimes things have happened to me and I probably haven't recognized it. But I think that's why it's also made me very aware of my next door neighbor and the person sitting next to me.
Mm.
So I can't actually say that I've had serious cases of um, harassment or at a disadvantage because of I'm a woman.
Mhm.
But as I say, I mean, I also tend to take the good out of things, and I tend to try to. But I get horrified when I hear about sexual harassment. Or we've had 2 or 3 really bad crimes in the last 2 or 3 years, for which for such a small community have caused an explosion. And I've always been one of the ones that have been on the front line to support, to put it out there, to make sure it's handled properly, to sign petitions. So maybe I'm lucky, or maybe I'm just living in La La Land.
Mhm.
But I can't say. I mean, in fact, I lie. The worst case of my gender playing a role in my life, a negative one, is when I moved to Cyprus. My father had his unmarried sister living here. It was also my favorite auntie. Um, she'd never been married, so she had no kids. So when my son and I came to Cyprus, I
Mhm.
became her adopted daughter, and my son now had a grandmother. She actually changed when my son joined, became into life. She changed because, with kids, they jump in your face, they say, I love you, and you've actually got to react. But we'd always been very close. And I was always the one, if she was in trouble or she needed someone, she picked up the phone to. And then 2 or 3 years before she passed away, I actually moved in with her because wasn't doing particularly well financially. And I also realized that she was getting old. She used to lock herself in the house. And if someone wasn't in the house, if something happened to her, we wouldn't be able to get to her. And when she passed away, she left me a bigger portion of her property than she left the rest of the nieces and nephews. And the 2 males in the family decided they would bully me, they would try and bully me into handing over my property.
Mm.
Okay. Um, they didn't get it. It was a really harsh battle with a lot of bad words, not said on my side. Words were said to them to disempower me about stupidity, inconsiderate. A lot of words were thrown at me. Um, I came out a better person. I came out a stronger person. But that was a case of my gender playing a role, because if I was a boy, a male,
Mhm.
this would not
Right.
have happened. They wouldn't have considered it as easy.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, I laughed, not I laughed, I still say now, you know what, it, I used to be quite a conciliatory person. I don't fight easily. But
Mhm.
because this was something I was not going to give up, okay? You're not going to take things away from me because why? Because you're a man. It actually brought out a much stronger me,
Mhm.
and it also got rid of toxic people in my life. So I'm now flying. I mean, I'm lighter. So that was that people, I mean, the fact that I can turn around, I had to turn around because about a year and a half ago, no, in August last year, I was diagnosed with a benign brain tumor. That
Mhm.
had been, it's something that mainly women get, but it had been growing in me for 10 years. And I
Mhm.
suddenly realized how fragile my health was and how much the anxiety of this situation brought for me. And it made me reassess my life as well. So now toxic people, bye bye. So it's made me a stronger person. It's not pleasant.
Yeah, Magda, when you are talking all these incidences and in stories about your life, about your work, we know as a woman, like still we have long journey, we have a lot of struggles, and I think our audience and viewers are listening and watching us, especially the women. They also find maybe their challenges can be a different shape, but they also have how you develop that power to overcome that strength to overcome those challenges, how you did that. uh, just share with us so that our audience can get also inspired and they can also learn that yes, we can do that.
Well, first of all, I think you've got to have to be your authentic self. If you actually treat people authentically, You know what? You know that saying, that is what you sow, you reap. When you treat people authentically, when you are in need, that love and support comes back to you from someone else. Okay. So I have always been true to myself. I've always been guided by kindness and fairness. I don't like being mean to people. I never have been intentionally, or I might have been once or twice, but it isn't who I am. I think we all slip occasionally. Um, I'm a good friend, and good friends means you when you're a good friend, it brings good friends to you. I believe in me. I've also been taught to believe in me. My parents believed in me. Okay. Uh, I know my limits. So when I don't have the right information or I don't know the answer, I know who to ask. Because with all this that was developing, I needed a good lawyer. I work for a law firm, so I'd go to them and ask them, or I have a cousin who's a very good lawyer, so I'd access the information and then put it all together and think about it and see what fitted me. So it's actually listening. You've got to believe in yourself. You can do it. You're worth it.
Right.
No one is better than you.
Yeah, that's
So I
spectacular.
think believing in yourself, but you also need to be. I think the fact that I know this sounds quite. The fact that I'm a good human being, because I don't do
Yeah,
things with meanness.
yeah, you.
I was, when I was ill, and I've never, when this all happened, the amount of love and support that came back to me made me cry, because it was humbling that, and then I realized that, you know what, it didn't come from nowhere. I give, when I talk to you, I give to you, because
Yeah,
this
I
is who I
think
am, because I'm
that's a
interested.
very strong thing because being a good human at the same time, know your authentic yourself and look for help when you need. So I think these
Exactly.
are very, very key points, how one can handle those challenges and uh, such situation if arise. And
I think
when
that's the
we,
most important one. Don't be shy to ask for help. Don't be
yeah,
shy to ask for help.
exactly. And then when we are talking about it, mm, what last message would you like to give to our especially women's who just need from your life, from your experience, if we ask give in line one message for them?
You're not alone. If you're in trouble or whatever, you're not alone. There's always someone that you can ask a question from, who has suffered the same thing as you, who has had the same experience. So no, you're not alone, but don't be afraid to act alone. So to me, that's the
Exactly.
biggest message I would give.
That's wonderful. And last not least, why do you feel the platform like this Women Dialogue is important?
For exactly the same reason that you said earlier, our voices need to be heard. Because in hearing different voices, you realize you identify with some people, you don't identify with other people, you pick up pieces of information, someone makes you laugh. So I think we need to get each other's voices out, because we all have a story to tell, and if we can learn from everyone, and we can teach everyone. Everyone's got something to learn from us, and we've got something to learn from other people.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot for uh, sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, your story to inspire, to motivate to all of us who are part of this journey, who are listening and watching us. So thank you, Magda, for your time, for your energy, all you have shared with us. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
I thank you. I thank you. And
Thank you.
thank you to
And
the listeners too.
yes, and thanks to all our viewers who are listening and watching us and becoming part of this journey to transform, to learn, and to become better yourself. And we will see you next time. Till then, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And one more important thing, don't forget to check the Magda's work. I'm going to put her details in the description as well. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.